Welcome back, everyone. We're jumping into day 4 of our deep dive, and today we're tackling the idea of building a growth mindset.
Ooh, yeah, growth mindset. We've got a pretty diverse stack of books and excerpts to dig into today. Psychology, self-help, even some business and philosophy.
Should be a fascinating mix.
Mm.
So before we get lost in the details, what exactly are we hoping to uncover in this deep dive?
Well, I'm really interested in exploring practical strategies for shifting from, that fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
Right, because we've all been there, feeling stuck like our abilities are set in stone.
Exactly. So we'll be looking at how to embrace challenges, see setbacks as opportunities, that kind of thing.
Sounds good. Now, one thing that struck me as we were prepping for this was how often we fall into the trap of the goals first mentality.
Oh, yeah. I'll be happy when I achieve X, Y, or Z. It's a classic. And Atomic Habits, James Clear even admits to falling into that trap himself.
Yeah, I remember that. He talks about how he used to put off happiness until he hit certain fitness goals or career milestones.
Exactly. And it's so easy to get caught up in that cycle of chasing the next goalpost, never really feeling content in the present moment.
So what's the antidote to that? How do we break free from that constant striving and find joy in the journey itself?
Well, that's where the growth mindset comes in. It's about shifting our focus from solely chasing the destination to finding fulfillment in the process of learning and growing.
Okay, so instead of thinking, I'll be happy when, it's more about appreciating the journey itself.
Mm.
How do we actually put that into practice?
Well, one strategy Clear suggests is habit stacking.
I've heard that term thrown around. What does it actually mean?
It's basically linking a new habit you want to build with an existing one. Like, he gives the example of meditating for just 60 seconds after you pour your morning coffee.
Oh, wow, that's so simple. But does it actually work?
It can be surprisingly effective because you're leveraging an existing routine.
I might have to try that one. Now, another book that tackles this idea of creating positive changes is Hardwiring Happiness by Rick Hanson.
Oh, yeah, Hanson's great. Taking in the good, right?
Exactly. It's about consciously absorbing those positive experiences,
Yeah.
letting them really sink in.
And he explains that this actually strengthens those positive neural pathways in our brains. It's like rewiring ourselves for happiness.
Fascinating. It's like we're training our brains to be more optimistic.
Yeah.
But what about those inevitable moments when things don't go our way? How does a growth mindset help us deal with setbacks and challenges?
Well, that's where someone like David Goggins comes in. His book, Can't Hurt Me, is all about pushing limits and using setbacks as fuel for growth. Did you know he ran 100 miles in 24 hours with almost no training?
No way. That's insane. Did he actually finish?
He did, but it wasn't easy. He went through some serious physical challenges, even wanted to quit multiple times during the race.
Wow, that takes some serious grit.
Right. And what Goggins highlights is that even when your body's screaming stop, your mindset can push you further. He calls it the 40% rule, that the idea that we're only tapping into a fraction of our potential.
So it's about pushing past our perceived limits. But what about the mental side of things? How do our thoughts and beliefs play into this whole growth mindset idea?
That's a great question, and that's something Michael Pilarczyk really dives into in Master Your Mindset. He argues that understanding the power of our thoughts is crucial for personal growth.
So instead of letting our thoughts just run wild, we need to become more aware of them.
Exactly. And a big part of that is identifying and challenging those limiting beliefs that we often hold on to, those I'm not good enough or I'll never be able to do that kind of thoughts.
Oh, I think we all have those lurking somewhere in our minds.
We do, and Pilarczyk emphasizes the importance of self-reflection, really examining those beliefs and asking ourselves, why do I think this way?
Because often when we dig a little deeper, we realize those beliefs aren't based on facts.
Right. They're often rooted in fear or past experiences.
It's like shining a light on those shadows and seeing that they're not as scary as they seemed. So we've got habit stacking, taking in the good, pushing past our limits, and challenging those limiting beliefs. It's like we're building a toolkit for developing a growth mindset.
I like that, a toolkit. And you know what else we can add to that toolkit? Optimism.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does optimism fit into all of this?
Well, in Authentic Happiness, Martin Seligman, who's a big name in positive psychology, talks about how optimists and pessimists explain events to themselves differently.
Well, that's interesting. Tell me more.
Optimists tend to attribute positive events to permanent causes, like their own abilities or character traits.
So they see those successes as a reflection of something internal, something stable.
Exactly. While pessimists often view those same events as temporary or due to external factors.
So it's not just about being positive, it's about how we interpret those events and whether we see ourselves as in control of our outcomes.
Precisely. And that sense of control is a key ingredient in a growth mindset. If you believe you can grow and improve, you're more likely to put in the effort.
This is all making a lot of sense. It's like we're starting to connect the dots between all these different concepts and strategies.
And we're just getting started.
Okay, I'm ready for the next piece of the puzzle. What else can we add to our growth mindset toolkit?
Well, let's talk about something that can be a little uncomfortable. Uncertainty.
Uncertainty? Ugh, not my favorite thing. I much prefer having a clear plan and knowing what to expect.
I hear you. But in Think by Design, Stacy Nierbron uses this really cool metaphor, foggy reflections.
Foggy reflections. I like that. What does she mean by that?
She's talking about how those moments of uncertainty, those foggy reflections, are actually opportunities for learning and growth.
Like we're navigating through a dense forest, and as we keep moving forward, the path gradually becomes clearer.
That's a great way to put it. She's saying that as we gather more information and experience, the fog lifts and we gain more clarity and confidence.
So instead of fearing uncertainty, we should view it as a natural part of the learning process.
Exactly. And she even encourages us to be a little damning of those old dogmas and biases that might be holding us back. Be open to new ways of thinking.
I like that. It's like giving ourselves permission to question everything.
Absolutely. And that's a key element of a growth mindset, that willingness to experiment and try new approaches. But of course, sometimes those foggy reflections lead to mistakes or failures.
Right, and those can be tough to deal with. How do we navigate those setbacks without losing our motivation?
Well, that's where understanding the difference between our feeling brain and thinking brain can be helpful. And Mark Manson talks about this in Everything is Fracked.
Everything is fracked. Okay, that definitely caught my attention.
Yeah.
But how does that relate to building a growth mindset?
Well, Manson argues that our feeling brain is all about instant gratification and avoiding pain.
It's that voice that says, give up, this is too hard.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas our thinking brain is more rational, focused on long-term goals. But often our feeling brain wins out.
Especially when we're stressed or feeling threatened.
Right. And Manson suggests that instead of fighting our feeling brain, we need to learn to understand it, even empathize with it.
So it's about acknowledging those emotional reactions without judgment.
Exactly. And he even suggests talking to your feeling brain, like, hey, feeling brain, how do you feel about going to the gym today?
That sounds a little strange, but I kind of get it. It's about bringing those emotions into conscious awareness.
Exactly. And Manson really dives into some deep topics in that book. He even talks about the role of suffering and meaning in our lives, the potential impact of artificial intelligence. It's pretty wide-ranging.
Wow, quite a mix. But how does all of that tie back to building a growth mindset?
Well, it's about recognizing that change is inevitable and being willing to evolve our thinking as the world around us evolves. It's not just about having a growth mindset in one specific area, but cultivating that mindset in all aspects of our lives.
So it's about being adaptable, open to new possibilities. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground already, and I feel like my brain is buzzing with new ideas.
Me too. And we're just getting started. There's still so much more to explore.
I can't wait to dive into the next part of our deep dive.
Me neither. Stay tuned because we've got even more fascinating insights coming up next. We'll be looking at some practical strategies for actually changing your mindset.
I'm ready for it.
You know, as we're exploring this whole idea of building a growth mindset, I think Solve for Happy by Mo Gaudat offers a really interesting perspective.
Oh yeah, I remember you mentioning this one. Goddard actually came up with an equation for happiness, right?
He did. It might sound a bit simplistic at first, but when you break it down, it really makes you think.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's the secret formula?
All right, so his equation is happiness equals your perception of the events of your life minus your expectations of how life should be.
So it's not just about what happens to us, but how we interpret those events and how our expectations color our happiness.
Exactly. He talks about the importance of managing those expectations and choosing how we perceive what's happening around us.
And what's really inspiring is that he developed this equation while going through some incredibly difficult personal challenges. Didn't he lose his son?
He did. And it's remarkable how he found peace, even happiness, in the midst of such profound grief.
That's a powerful reminder that happiness isn't about avoiding pain or difficult emotions. It's about choosing how we respond to them.
Absolutely. And he also talks about letting go of our attachment to outcomes, which can be a huge source of stress and unhappiness.
Okay, so focusing on what we can control our thoughts, our actions, our perceptions, and releasing the need to control everything else.
Right, and that aligns perfectly with the growth mindset philosophy, focusing on effort and learning rather than fixating on achieving a specific outcome.
So we've talked about embracing uncertainty, managing expectations, challenging limiting beliefs. What other tools can we add to our growth mindset arsenal?
Well, let's shake things up a bit and talk about rebelliousness. Francesca Gino explores this in her book Rebel Talent.
Hold on, rebelliousness. Sounds a bit dangerous. Are we talking about breaking all the rules here?
Not exactly. Gino's talking about a specific kind of rebelliousness, one that's driven by curiosity, a desire to learn and grow, and a willingness to question the status quo.
Okay, so challenging conventional thinking, not being afraid to go against the grain when it comes to learning and personal growth.
Exactly. And she argues that this kind of rebelliousness can actually lead to innovation, creativity, positive change.
Do you have any examples of this in action?
Absolutely. Think of Chesley Sullenberger, the pilot who landed that plane on the Hudson River.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
saving everyone on board. What made that a rebellious act?
Well, he didn't just blindly follow standard procedures. He assessed the situation, thought outside the box, made a bold decision that ultimately saved the day.
So it's about trusting your instincts, being willing to deviate from the norm when necessary.
Right. And Gino also highlights Pixar, the animation studio. They have a culture that encourages employees to challenge each other's ideas, embrace constructive conflict.
That's fascinating. So this kind of healthy rebelliousness has been key to their success.
It's a great example of how questioning assumptions and embracing diverse perspectives can lead to breakthroughs.
Okay, so we've talked about external challenges and how a growth mindset helps us navigate them. But what about the internal challenges, our own self-doubt, those negative thoughts?
That's where self-awareness is so important. And The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris offers some really valuable tools for developing that self-awareness and managing those tricky emotions.
Always up for adding more tools to the toolkit. What does Harris suggest?
He introduces the concept of diffusion.
Diffusion.
Yeah, separating ourselves from our thoughts, recognizing that they're just thoughts, not necessarily truths.
Oh, that's so important. We often get so caught up in our thoughts, believing them to be facts.
Right, it's like taking a step back and observing those thoughts without getting swept away by them.
I like that. And what else does he recommend?
Acceptance, allowing our thoughts and feelings to exist without judgment or resistance.
So making space for those emotions without letting them control our behavior.
Exactly. And he also talks about values, identifying what's truly important to us and using those values to guide our actions.
That's a great way to bring more meaning and purpose into our lives. And as we've seen, purpose can be a powerful motivator.
Couldn't agree more. And you know, when we talk about the power of our beliefs, Carol Dweck's work in mindset is essential.
Oh, mindset is a classic. I remember learning about fixed versus growth mindsets back in school.
Her research was groundbreaking. She showed how our mindset, whether we believe our abilities are fixed or malleable, plays a huge role in our success.
And if I remember correctly, she found that students who were praised for their intelligence were actually more likely to give up when faced with a challenge.
That's right. Those students developed a fixed mindset, seeing their abilities as something they were either born with or not. They were afraid to risk looking dumb.
While the students who were praised for their effort, they embraced the challenge, saw it as an opportunity to learn and grow.
Exactly. They weren't afraid to make mistakes because they understood that mistakes are part of the learning process.
Dweck's research is so empowering. It shows that we can cultivate a growth mindset regardless of our background.
Absolutely. And she offers practical strategies for making that shift, like becoming aware of our self-talk, challenging those negative beliefs, focusing on the process of learning, not just the outcome.
Love that it's not just theory, but actionable advice.
And what's amazing is that her work has had an impact beyond education. It's being applied in business, sports, relationships, even parenting.
It's really a testament to the power of this concept to transform lives.
Now, for a different perspective on how our minds work, Daniel Kahneman's thinking fast and slow is fascinating.
Oh yeah, the two systems of thinking, right.
Exactly. He calls them System 1, System 2. System 1 is fast, intuitive, emotional.
Our gut reaction.
Exactly. While System 2 is slower, more deliberate, analytical.
Like our brain has two different operating nodes.
Perfect way to put it. And he shows how these systems interact, sometimes working together, sometimes battling for control.
Oh, I know that battle all too well.
We all do. And Kahneman highlights how those biases and cognitive shortcuts can sometimes lead us astray, especially when System 1 is in the driver's seat.
So it's about understanding the limitations of our intuitive thinking, engaging that more rational system too when making important decisions.
Right. And he also talks about the importance of seeking feedback, information that challenges our assumptions.
That feedback loop is crucial for growth, being open to learning from our mistakes,
Precisely. And he even dives into loss aversion, that tendency we have to feel the pain of a loss more intensely than the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
which explains why we sometimes avoid taking risks, even when the potential rewards are high.
And for those of us cultivating a growth mindset, it means learning to be comfortable with discomfort, seeing challenges as opportunities for growth.
Wow, we've covered so much ground. Equations for happiness, foggy reflections, the dual systems of our brains.
It's been quite a journey. And one of the key takeaways is that building a growth mindset is multifaceted. It involves understanding our thoughts, managing our emotions, embracing uncertainty.
It's not a one-time fix, but a lifelong process.
And we've seen how this mindset can be applied to so many areas of life.
It's about living a more fulfilling, meaningful, resilient life.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, I'm excited to hear what other gems we uncover in the final part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned. We've still got some fascinating perspectives to explore, including practical tips for putting this growth mindset into action.
Can't wait. As we wrap up our deep dive into building a growth mindset, I think it's important to remember that it's not about being perfect.
Yeah, it's not about some unattainable ideal or anything like that. It's more about embracing the journey.
Right, the ups and downs, the whole thing.
Exactly. We're all human, right? We
Right.
make mistakes, have setbacks, face challenges.
It's all part of the process.
And the key is how we approach those experiences, right? To see them as opportunities for growth.
Yeah, to learn and improve along the way.
And to remember to be kind to ourselves in the process.
We don't have to have all the answers right away or get it right every time.
No, not at all. It's about progress, not perfection.
If there's one thing I hope you take away from this deep dive, it's that you have the power to choose your mindset.
You really do. It's not about being defined by your past or those limiting beliefs,
It's about shifting your perspective and embracing a growth mindset.
which can be totally transformative, by the way.
Yeah, and there are so many resources out there to help you along the way.
Books, podcasts, coaches, mentors, you name it.
So don't be afraid to reach out for support if you need it.
Absolutely. And be patient with yourself too, all right? This stuff takes time and effort.
But it's worth it.
Definitely worth it.
Yep.
So as you move forward, remember, embrace those challenges, celebrate your successes, and learn from your setbacks.
Because ultimately, it's those challenges that help us grow and become the best versions of ourselves.
I love that. That's what it's all about.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into building a growth mindset.
It's been a pleasure exploring all these different perspectives with you.
We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.